complete drag queen energy, which I loved. She is riding a chariot pulled by 6-wheelers, whipping them and screaming like a banshee. She's really coming in with that big dick energy, that mommy. she really knows how to own a room. Welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on the things from our childhood and wonder if they were any good to begin with. My name is Damon.
I'm DJ.
And DJ, I'm sure you're very excited. Today we're going to be looking back. We're in Tornado Alley. Yesterday we looked at last episode we looked at Twister, and today we're going to be looking at Return to Oz.
Oh yeah, that's a movie I definitely knew existed before you said we should do it. I'm super familiar with it. So here's what I think happens.
Yeah, give me your
give
me your rundown. Give me your summary of the movie before you even watch it. Go ahead.
I want to say Dorothy.
You're doing great so far. Great. Stay confident.
Dorothy, she wants to go back to Oz after her adventures. You may remember The Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard. Oh, so it's the same Oz.
Arguably the most famous
place.
movie of all time that you've probably seen. She gets a tack hammer from her uncle's toolbox and knocks herself unconscious in order to return to Oz. Sort of a,
so far you're batting 1,000.
Sort of a sleeper situation in order to get back. And she does not go back to Oz. Ooh. Suffers a severe concussion.
Okay.
And eventually does recover most of her abilities. But it takes a while. It's a long road. And it's just a classic tale about the dangers of self-concussing.
You're pretty close. I would if you could throw in a chicken and some electroshock therapy, you'd be there.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is a movie I watched as a kid. I believe it holds the record for longest. I don't know what the phrasing would be. The longest after the fact sequel. Okay. Like there's such a gap between the original movie and what it's sequelizing.
Yeah, because it's like 50 years, right? When did the
Wizard of Oz is 38 or 39?
Yeah.
And this is 85, so yeah, a little shy of 50 years. It's insane. Fairuza Balk is our Dorothy. Oz is where we lay our scene. She's got a talking chicken. And
does she come to Oz where did the talking chicken come from?
She lives on a farm.
But the chicken talks in Oz, or talks
only in Oz? Only in Oz does the chicken talk.
Okay.
The chicken's name is Belina. And there is electroshock therapy. Auntie M is trying to cure Dorothy of her ramblings about this magical land. So she takes Dorothy Gale, one of the most beloved characters in film history, to be electrocuted in the brains.
Okay.
So that's where the movie begins. She ends up in Oz. There are wheelers, which scare the shit out of me as a kid and probably still residually do.
Those are the people with the little like skate on the back of their heel of their shoe
that go through the mall, and you're like, "What the fuck is this kid doing?" They have wheels for hands and feet, and they squeak as they terrorize small children and vocalizing chickens. You also have Princess Mombi, who kills women and keeps their heads so she can change out her head every once in a while. And Dorothy has to go through a hallway where all the heads are sleeping, and then they wake up, and I can still see it when I close my eyes.
Why are we watching this? This is a children's movie?
Yes, this is for children. ages 5 and up, please. It is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. It haunted my waking life as a child.
Oh my God.
And I can't wait for you to see it. I wish I could be in person to see you because I feel like it would be a little bit of a Nell situation watching you watch Return to Oz. It's deranged.
I don't want to watch this anymore.
But I will say this in its defense, because I've read some of the Oz books. It is closer to the Oz books than the Judy Garland movie.
Yeah.
The Oz books are completely insane.
What is your general take on Wizard of Oz? Was it a thing for you?
The movie Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, the Ridge.
A Ridge dress. We had it on a VHS tape. We taped it off the TV. It was on after Mary Poppins on the VHS tape. We hadn't learned how to pause during commercials, so it had a good collection of really sweet ass mid '80s commercials in it.
Yeah, that's the good stuff.
Mac Tonight was in there.
Oh yeah.
Some of those really perfect Coca-Cola commercials were in there. Very nice.
Ray Charles singing about Diet Pepsi.
Exactly. Yes. It is. Yeah, it was. I don't think it was a thing for me. But yeah, I liked Wizard of Oz. I watched it a lot. I think it was one of those movies where and I'm sure this is true of most kids. I had because you watch it so early in your life for the most part, you have no concept that it's so old. Right. And because it's in color, it doesn't feel like an old movie to your kid brain, or for the most part in color, and the black and white is sort of used as an artistic effect. And it kind of holds up. The tornado in the original Wizard of Oz, kind of looks like a tornado. Even though it's just nylons, some woman's nylons on a weird cone they were running along the back of the set.
I remember watching The Wizard of Oz, but I wasn't until a little bit later where I was I think I liked it fine, but then I realized how big of a thing, and then I got almost rejected it because of how why is this such a thing?
Too mainstream for Deej.
Well, it wasn't like being a 7-year-old hipster so much as just being well, I didn't like it that much. Why are we so into this? And then realized that a lot of people were kind of obsessed with it. And then I also I think I was confused by the sort of use by the gay community of the imagery of Dorothy. I'm not upset by that now, but I was confused by it as a child, where I was just what is this? So it's a gay thing to like the Wizard of Oz too? Mm-hmm. I don't understand. I just didn't understand literally what the deal was. Why?
I actually can't speak to the Dorothy thing. I don't know why that was a thing. I feel like I should know, but it's a blind spot. It's you just asked a question that I was why have I never asked this question? Why is this a thing?
I mean, it's a good outfit.
Aside from it being,
it's a good outfit.
No, it's iconic. It's got the blue. She eventually gets that bow. They dye her eyes to match her gown.
Slippers.
That was always a line that freaked me out in the original movie when she asks the people of Emerald City to dye her eyes to match her gown. I'm I'm sorry, pardon? Judy, no. I don't know if it's just a residual love for Judy Garland in general is just one of those chanteuse women, those icons that just got transposed onto Wizard of Oz as her most famous movie. I don't know. Well, I don't know why the queers love Wizard of Oz so much. Or it also deals with getting out of a place that I'm doing a queer read live on the air. It's
here we go.
It's you magically, moving yourself from a place where you don't feel appreciated to a place where everyone's eyes are fixed on you, and you get to have an adventure, and you make friends that respect you for who you are. And then unfortunately, God damn it, Christmas, you have to go back to your family and visit them. You have to leave college and go home.
I don't know if that's why, but that's a good read, Damon. It's a good live reading.
Thank you. This
is me giving you poetry slam snaps. Yeah, I mean that does make. I mean, again, I know you're just sort of guessing there, but that does make sense. I'm not saying that I now have a problem with that, but I think I was just even more confused. But I was why do people like this movie so much? And then the tie to the gay community just made me go so wait, am I supposed to not like it? But you know what I mean? It was that weird sort of rejection you have when you don't understand something.
Well, it's also one of those movies that's, that is so old that almost everyone has seen it.
Yeah.
Because your grandma would have seen it, your mom would have seen it, and it's fairly family friendly. And because it's like so colorful and fantastical, like kids would be into it. Like as a kid, I never saw It's a Wonderful Life until like I was a teenager, and I was just like, I don't want to watch that. It's like 3 hours long and in black and white, and there are no wizards or anything in it. Although there is an angel. Whereas this, like, it's an easy entry point, and I think like, you know, Turner Classic Movies or like TNT could buy the rights really cheap and air it constantly on TV. And I think it kind of was like an event thing on just network TV too. Like I think it became like a holiday movie, like kind of like The Sound of Music and It's a Wonderful Life, where for some reason The Sound of Music is on Easter. I'm like, this has nothing to do with Easter. It has to do with escaping the Nazis. Is that an Easter thing?
So is Fairuza still in the iconic outfit?
No, she's in a very much downplayed version that's probably closer to the book, but not. No, hers is like it's like a prairie dress, but I think it's like in a muted brown.
So they went for like verisimilitude from the books and not really kind of tying into the iconography of the original movie. They were just
I mean, they keep the ruby slippers, which are not in the book. Those are exclusive to the movie because in the book they are silver slippers. But I think aside from the ruby slippers, everything else, like the Emerald City does not look like the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz. The Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion even do not look like those characters. The lion looks like an actual lion. You only see him briefly, but I mean, he looks like he would have in the books, where he's an actual, giant.
So we don't even get our like characters back, or like our buddies.
No, she when she returns to Oz, she finds out that the Scarecrow, who was made King of Oz, this is another thing that is something in the book. The Scarecrow is made King of Oz. He had a brain finally, so it's fine. Okay. But then she finds out he has been deposed and he's missing. And when she gets to the Emerald City, all the people inside have been turned to stone, including the Tin Woodman and the Lion. And she finds out that all the women's heads have been cut off. All the women's head statues have been cut off. Remember that, it's important later. So yeah, it's very much like she returns back, and it's not the same. But it very much references things that were not in the movie. That's probably why it's definitely a sequel to the books, but not necessarily the movie.
What a weird, I mean, I'll have to obviously reserve judgment without saying, but it seems like such a strange choice when you're making a movie to like one of the most iconic sequel to the movie, one of the most iconic movies of all time, that you would want to like, not that you would necessarily want to make the same kind of movie even, but that you would sort of like build off of that. Because that's the advantage of making a sequel.
Right. But it still keeps like the tropes of the and you were there and you were there and you were there. Like she does have a little prequel, or prologue in the movie where the people that play into that prologue are then playing people in Oz, which is very much a construction of the 39 movie. So it references it, but also like builds on the mythologies from the book that were not established in the movie, and it just gets kind of confusing. I don't know if it's that confusing, honestly, but we'll find out.
We'll find out. We're going to watch Return to Oz for some reason. We'll see you after the break. So, Damon, if you were a young girl with essentially infinite powers through ruby slippers, would you use them to create a podcast or support your favorite podcast?
First thing, I think I would put like a McDonald's in my house. I know that's first off, I'm a young
Richie
girl,
Rich.
so I mean, it's a Richie Rich thing. But then I wouldn't staff it, because then I'd realize how expensive it is to have a fully staffed McDonald's. I'm not eating McDonald's. I have McDonald's maybe once a month, but it is my go-to fast food place, although that makes me seem really basic. Second thing, though, would be to create a podcast, because I don't know. I think we're close, but I don't know if there are enough podcasts yet.
Well, certainly not with two white guys talking.
It feels like there's a dearth of podcasts with two white guys with no credentials.
Absolutely no authority whatsoever on the subject of which they speak. I think we need more of those.
What the world needs now? That's
podcast,
what,
sweet podcast. Those are the original lyrics. But then they were like, those haven't been invented yet. So patreon.com patreon.com/your inner child is an idiot. It's basically like love. It's been invented. Love's been invented. They did love first, and then they were like podcast second.
When podcasts were invented, they were like, oh, that's the one. That's what we meant.
That's what we meant.
Burt Bacharach, get him on the phone. That's what he meant the whole time.
Hey, we're back. We watched Return to Oz for some reason, and
you said it like people were walking away, they were just headed out the door. Hey, we're back.
We're back. You don't have to. I know that commercial was a slog, but we're back now.
I can wait just as long as you can.
We watched Return to Oz, and I'd like Damon to recap that movie. Go ahead.
Thank you. Cold open. Dorothy Gale. She's got mental health issues, at least according to Aunt Em and lying Uncle Henry.
Motherfucker.
She's taken to, I didn't catch the doctor's name, but I called him Dr. Rutherford B. Hayes. She's taken to his electroshock therapy hospital in Topeka, I believe, where right before she's about to have her brains electrocuted, the power goes out, and she's saved by a mysterious young girl. As she escapes from the mental hospital, she ends up in a river, ends up in a crate that's floating down this raging river, and then she wakes up the next morning in the wonderful land of Oz that she visited back in 1939.
Yay! That sounds like it's going to be a hoot.
Oh yeah! If I've ever wanted to be in a fantasy land, it's the one with flying monkeys, belligerent apple trees, people who have wheels for hands and feet, and witches galore. Any imagined witch you can come up with, they got them. We got the pointy hats. We got the old ones. We got the young ones. We've got ones with multiple heads. We got them all. Come on down to Oz. You're going to love it. And you're going to weirdly not want to go home. Like, get out of here, lady. This place sucks. There's only it's vying with Westeros for worst fantasy land I'd never want to visit. Anyway, she ends up mysteriously, her chicken from the farm, Belina?
Yeah.
Who can now talk, is with her. They go to the Emerald City. They find it's been destroyed. They run across these ne'er-do-well wheelers who threaten and antagonize them. But they end up with TikTok, who is a one-man army who has to wind up. You have to wind up. He saves the day. But they end up going to Princess Mombi, realizing that Scarecrow is missing. He was the king of Oz, at least according to the books. And Princess Mombi is the only person who would know where he is. They encounter Princess Mombi. She's a bit of a work in progress, I'd say. A bit of a particular lady. She's got 31 heads, 30 of which she has cleft from the bodies of other women. She keeps them in a giant museum-style case. She is nightmare fuel. She locks Dorothy Gale in a tower. She encounters Jack Pumpkinhead. Then she makes a Gump, which is like sort of a moose creature out of couches and a mounted Gump head. She attaches to the front of these couches. They fly away. They go to the Gnome King, who apparently stole all the emeralds from the Emerald City. He turns out to be a dick as well. Surprise, surprise. But he's got a chicken egg allergy that saves the day when Belina finally lays one in his old mouth. And, they find the Scarecrow, and they were about to crown Dorothy queen of this hellscape when she was like, you know what? I really need to get back to 1899 Kansas. That's how terrible this place is. I'd rather be in Kansas in 1899. Peace out, you fucks. See you around. Oh, and Ozma, turns out that was the girl who rescued her from the mental hospital, and she's crowned queen of Oz. How'd I do?
There you go.
Did I get it?
Pretty good considering how pretty batshit this movie is. I noticed just casually as a fan listening to you recap this. I noticed
casually
not a lot of time with our favorite characters from the first movie, which is what I've seen.
No, their story is continued by two of them being turned into stone,
yes.
The Scarecrow being kidnapped and turned into a giant emerald, and Toto being left wailing in the streets.
Yeah, buddy. But don't worry, we get.
I thought it was like almost like a Frank Miller reboot of Wizard of Oz. Like, how can we make this more gritty?
I honestly like. We'll be talking a lot more about this throughout, I'm sure. But like, I honestly, because if you told me like, someone was like, "Hey, I went to the original source material. I wanted to make another movie on it, and I didn't want to just sort of make a direct sequel to the most popular movie of all time. I wanted to do something different." I would be like, I appreciate that. But also at the same time, I find myself being like, where the fuck are all the characters that I came here for?
Right.
Like, you're like, Dorothy is like 10 years younger. So it's like, it's weird. I don't know if that's more like a lot of these things, having not read the source material, I don't like, it's not like it's my favorite book they adapted. It's like something I've also never read. So I'm just like, if you're like, well, that's in the book. I'm like, well, I don't give a shit. You know, like I haven't. So it's just kind of, they make a lot of choices like that, which on paper is like, he had to have known, the director had to have known, like it was going to be a risk. You know what I mean? To be like, I'm going to take literally the movie like almost everyone alive has seen, and I'm not going to capitalize on that almost at all. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sort of use it, but I am going to go to the source material where it seems like this is a lot more true to it, which means it's a lot just creepier in general. Because we got. And also some of that is casting too, like, which again, I don't know if they were just like how descriptive the book is, but like Fairuza Balk playing Dorothy is like 10.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Judy Garland was like, well, she played a kid. Was she a kid when she was like 20 or
I don't know how old Judy Garland was, but I think
something.
she is supposed to be an older, I mean, she looks like an older teenager in Wizard of Oz.
Like
so I think
16
she
or
is in her late teens.
And then Toto's like a brown dog, which is like a famously like a dark.
He's a Scotty in the 1939 movie, but here he's just sort of like a terrier mutt.
Yeah.
Gritty reboot.
Yeah,
Make him ugly.
It does seem like they picked, they didn't other than having ruby slippers in it, they didn't really use any of the fondness that someone who liked the original Wizard of Oz might have come to this movie with.
Yeah, I think that well, I mean, from what I read, I mean, the director really wanted to do a sequel in the style of the books. But right. Yeah, he tries to have it both ways in that he alludes to a lot of our favorite characters. We go back to places that we visited in the first one, but they don't look like they looked in the movies, of course. And the only thing that really carries over is the ruby slippers, which were famously silver slippers in the books.
Right.
It leads to a very confusing thing because in the books, yes, the Scarecrow is crowned king after the wizard leaves Oz, but that is not covered in the movie. It's just sort of mentioned here in passing. Oh yeah, the Scarecrow, he's the king of Oz now. And I was like, that bumbling fuck?
Yeah.
The guy who couldn't stand up for most of the movie? Right. He's the king of Oz. All right.
I found myself confused because I was like, did we know that? Did we learn that at the end of the movie? But I just,
Yeah, and it's very it's very confusing. The movie almost like assumes we're as familiar with the books as we are with the movie, and I'm like, right. We are not familiar. Wicked hasn't come out yet.
Right. This movie is very creepy.
Oh my god!
So basically, Dorothy has been traumatized by. Well, first of all, I don't know. Like, is Oz supposed to be real? Like, that's a kind of a bigger question I have because, like, in the first movie, it's not clear either because it's like, yeah, and you were there, and you were there, and it's like, okay, well, she got knocked unconscious by a tornado, and then she had this very vivid dream. That all kind of makes sense, and then now this is like 6 months later, and so she's still like just constantly talking about Oz, and her family, her aunt and uncle who she lives with, are worried about her. And so they take her to shock therapy.
Right.
Which, 1899, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie this movie at least would have us believe that Oz is real because Bellina is gone by the end of the movie because she decides to stay in Oz.
Right.
The key she received is real. Although Aunt Em seems to recognize the key and says, I turned it 1,000 times. What are you talking about? You crazy kid. I'm going to shock these dreams out of your brains. Yeah, it starts out real strong. I mean, you take one of the most beloved characters from cinema history and you're literally about to shock her brains.
You make her
out of
younger, like a little girl, and then vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
And then she also we see like Ozma, which we learn later is Ozma, like the little girl that saves her, just like appears in the window, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of really creepy things. Like it's all, I mean, intentionally, I don't think this is like them making a mistake. It's all
even not even in terms of creepiness, like back to my gritty thing, like they allude to Uncle Henry is faking that he's injured. Like Aunt Em is doing all the work on the farm. The house is only half rebuilt, and they cut to a shot of Uncle Henry just sitting on the incomplete porch with his feet up. And Dorothy says he broke his leg, Aunt Em, and Aunt Em, aka Carrie's mom, says that leg's mended, Dorothy. It's mended. It's such, and I'm like, so he's lying about why wouldn't he finish building the house? Why wouldn't he do these things? And it's sort of this weird thing that when she is rescued at the end of the movie, he sort of throws aside his cane when he sees Dorothy and he runs to her. And then by the end of the movie, he's like rebuilding the house. And I'm like, do we need to address the house of lies that Uncle Henry has built here?
You didn't build the real house, but you certainly built the house of lies.
You built a fucking castle of lies, Uncle Henry.
I didn't even catch that. So, but that is weird.
I don't think I've ever caught it except in this viewing that he is faking his injuries. I mean, it might be a psychological thing, but the movie does not give me anything else aside from this to
I think I just like, to me, in passing, it seemed like it was just Auntie Em just kind of bitching. You know what I mean? Like it just seemed like she was like, he's being lazy, and Dorothy's like, he broke his leg, and she's like, yeah. But I didn't really think about it too much. Not a lot of buildings in 1899 Kansas.
I mean, that actually felt very realistic to me.
Yeah, it felt like, did you ever watch Deadwood?
No.
When they like, at the beginning, they're like, it's basically like there's not a town and then a town's there, right? Because it starts like, there's just like a small mining camp, and then they start building buildings, and over the seasons, it becomes this like little, and it reminded me of that, where you're just like, there is not much here. It makes sense.
There's like a general store and like a few other places.
Like post office.
They're passing through. Yeah, post office. I think it's called Franklin. And Dorothy says, never been past Franklin before.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, let's start with the lady of the day. What? Dorothy. Let's talk about Dorothy. How'd you feel like, I know she is younger than Judy Garland's Dorothy. I will say she is accurate to the books. Like Dorothy is a young girl. But how did you think Fairuza Balk did?
I thought she
friend
did
of the
fine.
show.
Yeah. I thought she did fine. She's a little girl. Could have been a lot worse. I'm not a big fan of most young children acting like because they're usually bad at it. I thought she did fine. I think Dorothy as a character is pretty likable. She's like immediately forgives anyone that makes a mistake and apologizes for it. Like she's literally still falling, and someone says sorry, and she's like, nothing we can do about it now. And it's like, wow, okay, good for you. I thought that was when the chicken starts talking, like she is in like the river and almost drowns, and there's not a chicken there, and then she wakes up in Oz and is sort of figuring out what's going on. And first of all, the chicken's there, whether it can talk or not. Where did the chicken come from? Because it was not with her in the hospital, because that would be bonkers. And then not only is the chicken there, but it can talk, and she's just like, oh, what's up? Like she just super rolls with it, which I think, if this were a real situation, a certain child might actually do that, because they're like,
right.
Oh, well, I guess this chicken talks now. Like,
especially a child with delusions.
Well, yeah, and she's given her a previous experience in Oz. She's like, well, some weird shit happens. We must be in Oz.
Let me show you around the joint, Bellina.
Yeah, and she immediately, she is a little too trusting. She tries to be nice to the Gnome King. She tries to be nice to what's it, Momvilla? What's Mombi? Mombi, and it's sort of like only realizes a few minutes later that, oh, this is like a bad person. And then she's kind of feisty, when she gets captured, she's kicking and she's, and she is not up for the electroshock therapy. She's very afraid. She's like, why do you have to restrain me? I wish I weren't restrained. Like, she's very calm. Like, she's pretty calm for a little kid being strapped to a gurney and rolled into a place that's going to literally shock her.
I agree. I think she does a good job. I think the script does a disservice to her because they start us out with this idea that she is delusional. She can't sleep. She's literally seemingly traumatized because she can't stop talking about Oz. She can't sleep. Her parents are at their wits' end with her. And so it starts us off on this wrong foot with her. But I think that Fairuza Balk does a good job with it. I am of the same mind, as we've mentioned many a time, towards child actors as you are.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Cast, just like they did during Shakespeare's time, just cast adults as children, make them stand on their knees, tie shoes around their knees. Done. Kids.
What's the problem?
Kids. If Ian McKellen can play Hamlet, an 18-year-old character now at 80, we can have him also play a 5-year-old.
I'm so scared, Auntie M.
Yeah, this movie, I really did keep thinking of The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Returns, and just sort of the trend towards, what if we made Superman sad? That sort of attitude towards rebooting franchises of just this isn't fun. That's why we don't make Superman sad. This is miserable and a slog. You've introduced electroshock therapy and, husbands failing in their duties, Aunt M being mean. You've introduced malpractice.
Yeah.
You've introduced people being turned into sand. You've introduced rock men rotting before our very eyes. You've introduced decapitation into this story.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It's very dark. It's very dark.
It's so dark.
The Doctor, I don't know that he was obviously a villain in the sense of he was about to do electroshock therapy on Dorothy, but presumably he's a doctor trying to do this thing that
it's hard to tell if he's a witting villain, if he's aware of what he's doing.
It's 1899. You got to give perspective. He was doing his best with what he knew, but at the same time, that doctor. So what happened, kind of in quote unquote real life, is the hospital was hit by lightning and the power went out, and then something happened, and the doctor was trying to protect.
He got struck by lightning, and so the building caught on fire, and then he died in the fire.
Yeah, he was trying to protect his equipment, and he died.
We find that out at the end. That's not part of the prologue, though. That would just put too much of a damper on this movie.
Right. Yeah, no, but it's just it's dark throughout, and we don't get. It's very labyrinthy, honestly. It's very much not even quite as goofy as Labyrinth, but
Labyrinth is not as dark as this.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Then it's just this girl practicing a play in the park, and then the Goblin King, and she's annoyed with her brother, and then the Goblin King shows up and seduces her, maybe. But this, I guess you could, thinking about it though, President Benjamin Harrison or whatever, he does have mental health patients screaming in the background, so he can't be unaware that maybe what he's doing is harmful.
Well, and Ozma, when she frees Dorothy, says those are the damaged patients.
Oh my God.
What does that mean?
It's just such the worst foot to start this on. Because they're actually worse than the actual villains in Oz, it almost feels like. They're about to electrocute a sweet girl. The Gnome King seems to have actually legitimate concerns, perhaps. And
the Gnome King says so he's basically a piece.
The Gnome King,
apart.
who was played by the same actor I'll mention as this doctor.
As the doctor.
And just like in the original movie. And Princess Mombi is played by Jean Marsh, who is the head nurse.
Not Jean Smart.
Not Jean Smart, although she's having a renaissance.
She is.
Jean Marsh, who
Jean Smart's having from reconnaissance.
Willow. We know Jean Marsh from Willow, but she was in a few other things.
Was she Kaya?
No, she was not Kaya. She was not married to Willow. She was Morgan Cellophane, or whatever the hell her name is. Sure. I can't remember.
I definitely remember.
she's the head nurse. So it does that same thing of like, you were there and you were there and you were there.
Right.
But the Gnome King, go on. You were going to talk about the motivation.
Well, I was just saying, the Gnome King is like...
Evil Gnome King.
Well, he kind of like... He could be lying, but he's like, hey, all these gems came from this mountain, and people came here, and they dug out of this mountain, which is part of me, and took my gems. These are mine. That's why I had them. But like, he also seems to possibly be a liar. So like, we don't really know...
True.
If that's the truth of it, or if he... I don't know. But
it made me think that the Emerald City was pretty much the British Museum. Just going places, taking their stuff, and then, putting it on display in their own city.
Right.
But yeah, he might be a liar, but it also seems to make sense.
It does, yeah. They went to a nearby mountain and mined these gemstones to put them everywhere. But don't worry, he's bested. He's murdered.
Well, she also mentions, sort of complicating things. She's like, you have so much. And the line that actually made me laugh, and he's like, that is beside the point.
Just like, yes,
because he has plenty still. Like, he's still like, rich in gemstones and stuff. But you still can't steal.
No.
Maybe. I don't know.
I guess
this Jeff Bezos space thing makes me think about it some more. I'll get back to you.
Look, he's just an innocent billionaire going for a little ride. What's the problem?
What's going on down here that needs any attention? By the way, I want to, I'm huge into self-improvement.
Yeah.
If you know anything about me.
Big fan.
That's me. I want to enter more rooms just saying, so, which is Mombi does twice in this movie, and both times absolutely terrifying. She does as Mrs. Wilson, the nurse, in when Dorothy and who we find out is Ozma later are escaping the mental health thing. Mrs. Wilson had gone down to check on the generator, and when they're coming down the stairs, she is coming out the basement, and she just goes, so. And that's all she says, and I'm like, why would you just say so? And then later, when she's playing Princess Mombi, when they escape on the Gump plane, I'm sick and tired of these motherfucking Gumps on this motherfucking plane.
Sofa.
She throws open her window and goes, so! It's insane.
I think I didn't understand what she was saying.
But I want to incorporate that into vernacular more often.
Oh, yeah. She also says the most terrifying thing that you could ever say to a child of that age, which is, you may have a nap if you wish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very threatening to a 10-year-old. Not so much to me. That sounds delightful.
Yeah, put me in an empty room. You may have a nap if you wish.
Here is a juice. Thank you.
Here is a ball. Perhaps you'd like to bounce it. Tyler, when she appeared as the head nurse, Tyler said, she is too pointy. That was what he declared. Yes. She has those puffed sleeves of like the turn of the century, but they are Lady Gaga style points on her shoulders. I realized we had a revelation that why has no one done any Princess Mombi drag? When she encounters Princess Mombi, she's a young woman playing a lyre or a lute or something.
I think because only you have seen this movie before I just watched it. Now there's two of us.
It is possible. It would very much be like many of my Halloween costumes where I'm like, I put a lot of effort into it, and then like everyone's like, who the fuck are you? I'm like, princess. And they're like, I need more information. I'm like, Mom,
Diana?
Princess Mom. No. The heads, the powder of life, the ruby key.
Not really. I don't.
The Wheelers. I've hired, by the way, 6 to 7 men also who have to like ride around on wheels.
Let's talk about the Wheelers, by the way, while we're here.
Oh wait, I wanted to just say, like, when she is playing her lyre, she has like these metallic spikes that are shooting out of her collar, like going backwards. Mm-hmm. And then later, she has no head, and she's walking around like Frankenstein, which I also appreciate.
That was terrifying.
That whole scene like still like gives me chills.
So Dorothy is locked in like the tower with Jack Skellington. Nope. Jack Pumpkinhead.
Very close,
though. He tells her that there's something called the powder of life that brought him to life, and she stores it. Princess Mombi stores it with her her original head.
In case 31.
Which looks more like a pantry when she gets there. But
Well, you keep all the old junk in here.
Also, Princess Mombi lives in either the Palace of Versailles or like the Las Vegas Westin. I can't really tell.
It's all mirrors and gold. It's very Donald Trump when we still like didn't just roll our eyes when we heard his name like.
But it was like
era of Trump.
Marble and gold, but then also just like, oh, is that a boardroom over there? There's like elements of it that are just sort of like a normal hallway, and it really pulled me out of it. The normal spots were like, wait, what is this part of I want to explore this part of the castle. Anyway,
I didn't notice the normal spots, but I did kind of like that, like the whole, I mean, she's living in the one part of Emerald City that has not been destroyed, just this one like building. And everything in it is completely covered in dust and cobwebs. But then when you go into her chamber, it's like this giant mirrored and gold hallway. And then every other room is like just left to the elements. Yeah. But she has this like resplendent.
She has the one room where she likes to slam the Mando, man. She's a pretty bitchin' Mando player.
She's touring with Mumford and Sons later this summer. Now that we're finally getting back to normal, things are reopening. Princess Mombi's on tour.
Okay, so anyway, Dorothy sneaks down to try to get the Powder of Life, and of course, when she opens the original head, like wakes up,
which also another. Just to interrupt. No, she doesn't get a so. This time, she says another very odd thing, which is she says Dorothy Gale. But it's one of those things that it is not scary. If I watched it today, it is not scary. But I had like residual, like nostalgic chills seeing her saying. Her eyes just open and she says, Dorothy Gale. And I'm like, why would you just say your name? Why were you ready with the first and last name?
And then
because I can't get anything. Like if you wake me out of a deep sleep, I'm not saying your first and last name. I'd be like,
I'd be like, what day is it? Do I have things to do this morning or can I sleep in? But then all of the other heads wake up and start screaming, and then her body just sits up in bed, the headless body. Oh, God.
By the way, I have a technical question. We're both not biologists, but that hasn't stopped. We probably have a biology podcast by the end of this. But what is she snoring out of? Princess Mombi, when she's asleep, she is snoring, but she has no head. So is it just her esophageal
she's got the
cavity just flapping in there?
Epiglottis. She still has epiglottis.
They're still sphincters, and they can still make vibrations.
Terrifying. It's all very terrifying. So what's that? Do we always know that was her full name? Like was that in the movie? The original
I don't
movie?
think it's said as much in pop culture, but yeah, that's Dorothy Gale's name. It's
no, I mean I believe it's accurate, but like
no, I mean even I think in the original movie, I mean she's just such like a popular character that we know her as Dorothy, but yeah, I think it's Dorothy. I was saying like, and I'm trying to think of a time when anyone says Dorothy Gale in the original. Auntie M. Gale, Emily Gale,
Toto Gale.
Henry Gale.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Wheeler time. Wheelers.
Yes. Whew. The first antagonists she runs into are just people with wheels for hands and feet, and
these are played by the same guys who were the nurses in the electroshock scene, and they have stretchers that have ungreased wheels. But that's the first thing we hear is the squeaking of wheels in Emerald City, and there's like a thing. Like graffiti on the thing. It says, beware the wheelers. I don't know who would have written that. It's got
to be them. It was an intimidation.
Oh yeah, you got to build your own hype. No one's going to toot your horn, so just fucking do it. That's what I always say when I'm coaching the rappers that I represent.
Just 20 years later, it would have said hashtag.
Hashtag beware the wheelers.
Yeah.
And then you got to look it up to figure out what that means. Like, just tell me. I got to get my phone out. I'm using data. I'm obviously roaming. I'm in the middle of a destroyed city.
It actually is hashtag BTW, but then they got confused. It didn't actually work that well because that actually means by the way. And
that's not going to help.
Yeah, it got buried, so they had to start a new one. Trending topics.
I did notice that there's an easy way to defeat the Wheelers that I never thought of until viewing it this time, which is go halfway up the stairs and just stop. They can't get you. What are they going to do? They'd have to like sort of do like a side, like a crab walk down the stairs. Anyway, so these are guys, they're very like almost like Dr. Seuss meets Velvet Goldmine. They're very like electro punk styled guys.
It's very like warriors coming to play.
And or like that mixed with like when Joel Schumacher has gangs in the last two Batman movies, and they're all like day glow, like gay gangs. And I'm like, what is this, Joel Schumacher? What do you think this is?
We call those gangs. There's a Y in
with
there.
a Y, but a parenthetical Y.
Yeah.
And,
which also looks like a butt. So.
Wait. What's yours look like? What's going on with that Y?
A cartoon butt. Not like a real butt.
So they have wheels for hands and feet, and they're sort of like crouched over themselves, almost like a dune buggies. Like they're just arched over their hands and feet.
Very bad
they wheel
posture.
around. They don't grease them because they don't have thumbs. They can't grease their wheels. Like,
what are they going to grease them with? They got to just...
And they're absolutely terrifying for some reason.
Yeah.
And they threaten, what's her name? But then, like, Dorothy Gale, as you might remember her as Dorothy Gale. And when she runs down a hall and she, like, finds the key that she landed in the Kansas farm, and she opens a door and she finds TikTok. But then these, like, they also talk like cokeheads. They're just, like, out of breath and, like, just, like, talking at the top of their lungs. And it's like, hey, dude, stop partying for a minute. It's like 2 p.m.
I got to go to work.
And they do warn her that chickens are outlawed in Oz by the decree of the Gnome King. But then eventually she winds up TikTok and he saves the day.
Yeah, you want to talk about TikTok?
Pick me up. Pick me up. Yeah, TikTok, he kind of looks like Wilford Brimley and General Pershing had a child and then coated it in bronze and added those weird toy keys on the back.
Looks like Fugitoid. I don't know if you ever... That's a pretty deep pull from the Ninja Turtles universe.
Fugitoid.
There's a robot named Fugitoid. It's like this scientist whose like mind gets like trapped in this robot. And then I think he had his own comic of like... I think he was actually appeared before the Ninja Turtles, like in Mirage Comics, and then he became part of the Ninja Turtles universe.
Oh, I think I had Fugitoid.
Yeah. I had,
But he
that's
was
the
like
only
a
reason
cartoon-
Yeah.
He was a character that wasn't in the show. I guess he was in the comics and they just made like a figure out of him. I think my mom was like, Damon likes Ninja Turtles, here you go. And I'm like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah. It's definitely one where I probably had the action figure first and then like later was like, oh, that's that guy. He's in the comics. And then I think the later cartoons have had him in. Anyway, that's what TikTok looks like. Is this what
like
TikTok, the app, is named after?
Maybe. I think it's spelled the same.
It's spelled the same, yeah.
Well, you know, he only runs for a little bit of time and you can only do so long of a TikTok video, as the youths have told me. What youths am I talking to, by the way? None.
Those women that sold you a phone at Walmart.
Oh, yeah, they would have totally been into TikTok.
Walmart. Target. Whatever.
Please.
How dare you?
How dare you besmirch my name by saying I would go to one corporation when I was at a different corporate store? Yeah, he is very cutely designed. I find him very charming. Of her new characters that she encounters,
he's the least terrifying.
Absolutely. He has to be wound up. His thinking has to be wound. His speaking has to be wound, and his action has to be wound, which makes him very cumbersome. He very much is like almost like an off-brand Tin Man who needed to be oiled all the time. This character needs to be wound all the time.
Yeah, but he's very helpful because he immediately helps save Dorothy from the Wheelers, and then he's always like defending her.
And he's usually one that comes up with the plans, unless his thinking winds down, which it does at one point, and he just like sends everyone into like nonsense talk, nonsense tasks to do, which was funny. But I was also like, we gotta keep going. He can't be winding down all the time.
Yeah.
And then so we like him.
He also fakes having wound down so that Dorothy she tricks the Gnome King into like he tricks the Gnome King into thinking he's wound down, so he sends Dorothy in after him, and then he's like, I'm actually fine, which is pretty awesome. And then she pretends to whine, and it's the most adorable thing that happens in the movie.
Kids miming things. You're like, you're not selling it.
That was pretty cute.
It was cute. Then we encounter Jack Pumpkinhead, who is the scarecrow, essentially, of this setup.
Yeah.
He is exactly what you'd expect him to look like. He has a pumpkin for a head. He's sticks. loosely tied together. He keeps falling apart, much like the Scarecrow did in the original movie. And he has like a mommy complex. He's looking for his mommy, who we later find out is Ozma. But he wants to call Dorothy mommy. And she's like, yeah, sure. But he's a very sweet character, but I don't know. Like, this movie feels like like everything happens at a breakneck pace. It feels like we're always encountering a new character. And at first I was like critical of that, but then I was remembering the original movie and I was like, no, they kind of do that too. Like every scene she's meeting someone new.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell like why I feel like, at least as memory serves, why I feel like it works in that movie and it doesn't in this movie. And the thing I thought of was that in that movie, we know where she's going because she fucking sings a song between every scene telling us where she's going. She's off to see the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. In this, we never really know where she's going. She's always just sort of stumbling upon plot points. She captures one of the Wheelers and he's like, oh, well, if you want to know where the Scarecrow is, you have to talk to Princess Mombi. Luckily, she lives in Emerald City and here she is. And then, they find Jack Pumpkinhead who tells them about the Powder of Life. And Dorothy's response to when he's like, and my mom brought me to life with the powder of life. And she says, where's the powder of life? Like, that's her first question, which I thought was odd. I'm like, what do you got planned, Gale? And that's when they steal the powder of life, bring the Gump that they just created to life, and then fly away. But then they fly to the Gnome King, and it just is like, it's all like so quick, but they never really set out like, here is our plan. Like the original movie does. Like she goes to the Emerald City, then she goes to the Witch's Castle, and I know where we are in the plot. It's just sort of, all these things are just happening. It just feels like things are just falling into place.
Well, you never want to go to a second location with a Gump. I mean, that's just...
My mom taught me that.
Also, I thought this was neither here nor there, but at the end, they sort of restore everything with the magical ruby slippers that make her a goddess. And they restore the Gump to... just still ahead on a plaque. Like, why couldn't we restore it to the actual animal that it was?
There's only so much I can do, say the ruby slippers.
I don't want to be alive anymore. I can't swallow anything.
Right. I can't snore, oddly enough. That's not in the head. That's in the rest of the
neck.
body.
We learned that earlier.
Yeah, that is. I didn't even think of that, but that's true. He is left as now just basically like Big Mouth Billy Bass. At the end of the movie, he is mounted, his head is mounted, and he can talk, but he ain't going nowhere unless someone picks him up. We are sort of the Gnome King is alluded to throughout the movie because we see these weird rock faces that appear throughout the scenery.
Those are his gnomes, or just a rock?
I guess those are the gnomes in question. Yeah. He is the king of them. Yeah. And it's almost like a spy movie, or almost even more so like Inspector Gadget when someone would have to go tell Dr. Claw what's going on. Because you never saw the Gnome King and you never saw Dr. Claw, but they're always like reporting to him and telling him what's going on. It's actually, the design of the gnome rock faces is actually pretty cool because they don't have like set faces. They just like shift, and I don't really know how it was done, but it was kind of, I assume claymation, but it was pretty cool, I thought. A cool effect.
But also terrifying.
Oh no, that's what I meant by cool. Absolutely bone chilling. So then we meet the Gnome King. Have we talked about the Gnome King? We've sort of alluded to him.
No, not really.
He's also creepy. I mean, he at first like appears like a rock face, but then he sets up this game where essentially Dorothy's like, where's the Scarecrow? And he's like, oh, I've turned him into an ornament. But if you can find which ornament he is in my collection, you're free to go. And so they go in one by one, and as they each get 3 guesses, but as each one fails on their third guess, the Gnome King becomes more and more human.
Yeah.
And he alludes to Princess Mombi when she arrives that he eventually will become fully human. Why he wants to be human when I feel like it would kind of be awesome to be some sort of rock deity, I don't know. But he wants to be human. Plus, props to him for breaking down gender barriers by wearing the ruby slippers and looking great.
And rocking them.
Oh, yeah.
It is really
weird
because
pop of color, you got to have a little pop of color.
He doesn't really like have a bottom until he like puts his little feet out with the slippers.
So tiny. They're so
weird.
tiny. And are the ruby slippers like the ring in Lord of the Rings where it's just sort of they resize themselves?
Yeah. Yep, they fit to
Case
the wear.
closed. That's the lore. That's canon.
That's just reality. I hope you can accept it.
Consider it done.
They did. So they made a lot of like from the very beginning. As soon as they get there, everybody's sort of like weirded out or like scared of the fact that there's a chicken. You know, they're laying breadcrumbs. It's like obvious that we're going to find out why later, but it does become a little distracting because first of all, I was like, oh, how much time are we going to spend with this chicken? Because it's very annoying from the get-go because it's like got a like half chicken voice. And it's like,
yeah,
I wish we weren't in Kansas anymore.
And she also is like a regular Elaine Boozler. She's constantly like dropping little like one-liners. When they go to Emerald City and they see everyone's been turned into stone, she's like, oh, traveled all this way just to see a bunch of stiffs. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, Mae West, how about you cool it?
I was like, is this going to happen the whole movie? Luckily, no, because we meet like 90 more characters and we don't have room. But when it's just the two of them, I was like, oh boy. But yeah, everybody's like, oh God, a chicken. And then then at the end, we find out it's because the Gnome King is allergic to eggs.
We also, I mean, back to one more note on the Belina, like one-liners. They also sort of, because she's a chicken and chickens are constantly like bobbing around, they sort of use that as an excuse. Like if there's ever like a dull moment, just like, pop in a Belina line. And it gets a little distracting because they're not good jokes. They're like really hammy and tired. But it's also like so dark of a movie that it feels like out of place. You're not helping. You're just reminding me how miserable this whole place is. By the way, the Gnome King's knick-knack mindfuckery, very Indiana Jones 3. Of just like mind games with knickknacks.
You have chosen poorly.
Yeah, as I rot into the floor. So you mentioned this, but TikTok has the idea of like, as everyone else has been turned into more ornaments because they failed to find the correct one. TikTok has the idea of like pretending he's wound down, sending Dorothy to go get him. And then he's like, why don't I do my third guess and you see what I turned into? The whole plan doesn't work. Like it does not pay off. So it makes me wonder why they even did that because he disappears, but we can't see what he has turned into. Yeah. So it doesn't pay off. Eventually, Dorothy realizes that all the green ornaments are her Ozian friends, and she starts figuring it out. And the Gnome King like flips out.
Yes,
doesn't care for the game. Right when she was going to get her last guess in. Oh, and then we see the Scarecrow, and again, whew.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. The designs of our original friends.
He's very much folk art. Like he has like sort of gingham eyes. He's very like goofy. In not a pleasant way.
They did it where like he just has multiple frozen faces. So he's like
his mouth moves, but he's always smiling.
Yeah. Or
he's scared in this shot. But he's always like he's very much like the floaty thing outside of car wash, like those airmen. He has that movement. And I'm like, sir, we are in a hall full of ornaments that may or may not be denizens of Emerald City. Please don't move so wildly around.
He does catches
he does catch that vase.
The vase.
Because he's made of straw. It shouldn't just land on his belly.
Pads it.
I did like Tin Woodman. Like Tin Woodman we see briefly, although he has no lines. I liked his design. He very much looks like a bunch of tin cans.
Yeah, it was more like cartoonish.
Together. Yeah.
And then the lion is like a weird lion.
Well, he looks like a dog to me when we finally actually see him.
Yeah, it's kind of small for a lion, but yeah.
And also...
She does ride him. Dorothy does get to ride him.
That's true. She does get to ride him triumphantly, like Christ on a donkey, into Emerald City. People laying down palm fronds in front of her. It sucks that, I mean, the Scarecrow gets a few lines, but Tin Woodman gets no lines. Courage the Cowardly Dog gets no lines, which sucks. Like these are these are established characters, and it felt a little bit like they got a really big budget, and then halfway through filming, the budget was cut back.
Right.
Did you get that vibe? Like, so they when they first land in Oz, they see Dorothy's crashed house. And Dorothy just remarks, but where are all the munchkins? But they're in the middle of a forest. There's no signs of like a destroyed town or anything around her. Like, they were just like, we'll put the house here in a woods where the farmer will let us film, but we're not building any munchkin shit. The Emerald City just looks sort of absolutely destroyed. There's a lot of matte paintings in this.
Yeah. Backgrounds. Like
the Gnome King's like set is very disappointing for what is essentially the final boss of the game. Like it's just like a very unornate throne room. It's just like a gray area where the Gnome King's just hanging out. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be into like gemstones and stuff? Shouldn't you be surrounded by gemstones?
Yeah, it was like the Mighty Boosh level, like production value, like that. Right. Like you get the idea, but it's also like, okay, well, I did to compliment it a little bit. I thought he turns into his like giant form at the end. Yeah, and that was I thought that was interesting. It was
that was very cool. Like that scene in when they go to the knick-knack gallery or whatever, and he like crashes through the wall.
Excuse me.
When he crashes through the wall and it's just like, fuck you, the game's over.
You're destroying my Hummel figurine.
That is very cool. But his throne room is very disappointing for who is supposed to be our main antagonist that we've been hearing about and been alluding to like this whole movie.
What did you think of Ozma?
I don't know. That was another thing where, I mean, this is two of the Oz books sort of cobbled together, and that very much felt like, and Ozma's here. Like she kept, although she is like in the first act when we're actually in Kansas, that actress is like popping up and she helps Dorothy escape, but then she disappears for the entirety of the movie until the last 10 seconds. Although we do see in Mombi's castle, there is some sort of figure in the mirror.
Right. She's like trapped in the mirror in Oz, but not in the real world. I guess she can get out, but she can't get out.
I don't know how that.
They don't spend a lot of time explaining it,
so I don't know how that works. But Mombi says, Ozma. No one even knows you're here. No one even knows who you are.
Including the audience.
Including the audience. Please, by all means, Mombi, fill us in. And then she just sort of appears at the end when Dorothy's like, I can't stay here. This place is fucked up.
What?
And Ozma's like, don't worry, here I am. And then Jack's like, oh, that's my mom. And that's that. And I guess the Scarecrow's no longer King of Oz.
Right, they're like, listen, you can't fucking protect us. You can't be king. And
this
he's
is
like,
called a coup. You are Goonie and no one likes you.
I was a terrible leader. But then, like, it also is right after Dorothy says, I wish I could be in two places at once. And then Ozma appears. And it was like, is that Dorothy? Like, I was like, is that supposed to be, is Ozma like her?
She appears in the mirror and they like embrace hands
something?
And she pulls her out of the mirror. Yeah, it's very weird. It's very Alice in Wonderland, honestly.
Yeah. I don't think that's actually what they meant, but that was like, got confused for a second. But also the actress that plays Ozma, just like, there's several things where she just like, Dorothy will ask her a question or say something and she just looks at her. And it was like, cold as ice, Ozma. I thought we were cool, man.
No, please leave. You are a threat to my reign.
Now that I'm queen, I have to murder all potential usurpers. Yeah.
Ozma has like a sort of long exposition scene. I can't remember what she says, but I wrote a lot of Ozma exposition at the end, and then I put, and that's a fact. Like that's how it felt like at the end. She was just like just dumping information. Oh, right. They're just explaining how the Gnome King like took over, how Mombi took over, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, this is stuff you can do during the movie if you'd like. Oh, you just want to do it all here? Okay. And then I wrote, so I imagine Dorothy's even worse off mental health-wise.
Is this real or not?
Because now she's been taken back to this place that she was maybe trying to get over, and now I imagine she'll be like terrible. But apparently, according to the epilogue, she's cool now. This is all she needed. An even more traumatic trip to this place where all her friends are being murdered.
Yeah, it's not real. She actually needs some treatment. Probably not electroshock therapy.
Yeah, maybe just like talking to someone. This is why mental health has a stigma in this country.
She has now been in 2 disasters where people have died.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I do want to say this another great line that me and my brother really liked because we are both camp-loving queens. When Mombi finally arrives at the Gnome King to warn him that Dorothy's heading his way, even though she's already in the ornament room, he goes, yes, she's already here. But Mombi kneels before him. She bows to him, and he goes, lower. And then she like gets down on the ground, like presses her entire body flat to the ground, and he goes, lower. And then he laughs. I just like that because it's deranged. I also like that she is, again, complete drag queen energy, which I loved. She is riding a chariot pulled by 6-wheelers, whipping them and screaming like a banshee. She's really coming in with that big dick energy, that Mombi. She really knows how to own a room. You enter, the wind is blowing in your face. You scream "so" at everyone you can. You have as many heads just in cases. Also screaming if you can.
Yeah.
If they've been roused out of a deep sleep.
It's got an entourage.
Have an entourage of wheelmen who you treat as slaves, beat them as they drive a chariot, presumably under a desert that can turn them all into sand, and then just scream at as many people as possible. I love her. I love her to death. I'm done. That's everything.
Now, click your heels together and say, there's no place like the verdict.
There's no place like the verdict. There's no place like the verdict.
I'm going to go first because I think you're going to have more insight because you actually have seen this movie before. Your Inner Child is an idiot. This movie's terrible and terrifying, and I can't believe they let children watch it. And I've never seen it before, and I don't think it's very good. I'm just going to go with my gut because like in my head I want to be like, hey, he tried something. They tried something different. They went more to the source material, but it sucks. It's not fun. It's terrifying. There are some fun moments, but I think that's more like unintentionally fun, or the actors just like doing the best they could with what they got. I do not like it. I'm probably gonna have nightmares tonight because I'm a grown man who can't stand children's movies. Your Inner Child is an idiot. What do you think?
DJ, Your Inner Child is also an idiot. I think there's a lot of fun things in here. It is not a good movie as a whole. I think if you're curious, it is a very interesting movie. And if you're curious, I recommend checking it out because it is fucking insane. It is batshit off the wall.
It is. A point in its favor. A lot of the movies around here that I end up saying Your Inner Child was an idiot about, they just lost me in the middle or lost my interest, and I get just sort of bored. It's really hard to just not check out. If I weren't having to talk about it for an hour afterwards, I would really check out and start just scrolling on my phone or something. This one did not have as much of that problem. So I will kudos to you for at least maintaining my attention.
It's very much a movie. If I know you and I know a particular style of movie you're into, I would recommend to that person if they've never seen it. But to just a general audience, I would not recommend. It's very scary. It is not for children. I don't know how anyone got away with marketing this for children. It also it's just general troubles that we've already sort of talked about. It tries to be both a sequel to the books and to the movies and just sort of assumes that we know things from the books that we wouldn't have known. It's very kind of a plot holy and just things seem to be happening to Dorothy. There's no real agency on her part. She's just encountering things. There's no destination, so you don't really know what the cohesive plot of this is. Things are just occurring around her, and that's the movie.
Yeah.
Even the Gnome King, they just sort of crash land on his doorstep. At the end, even though he's thousands of miles away from Mombi's castle. Like I said, in the original movie, there is a clear destination that is made in the movie. But in this, she encounters the Emerald City, which is the destination in the original movie, in the first 10 minutes of being in Oz. And from then on, it's just sort of this untethered mess. But there is a lot of striking visuals in it, like Mombi's hallway of heads, the Gnome King's transformation, the ornament stuff. The character design is also really good. I like TikTok. I think Jack, I almost called him Skellington as well. God damn it. Jack Pumpkinhead is really well designed. And also with Jack Pumpkinhead, I was trying to figure out how they got him to work. Because in medium shots, he is very much a puppet. He has a giant head, he has stick body. But in distant shots, you can tell they probably got a super thin guy in an outfit. Because he looks a little thicker in distant shots than he does in smaller shots. But it's well done. Those things are interesting. Even the chicken puppet they got is pretty good in terms of being a realistic chicken puppet. But there is a lot of what is the term they give for parents? Like frightening imagery.
Yes.
There is a lot of that. But it is kind of a lark. So, maybe have a glass of wine and get stoned and watch it. But I can't recommend it as just like a straightforward movie.
With this, this could be a new award. Would this win a on in the background during drag brunch award?
Yes, it would win that.
Our inaugural on in the background during drag brunch award.
In fact, I'd like to see a lip sync for your life between the White Witch of Narnia and Princess Mombi. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's a good. Okay. What do you think, everybody? Email us, yourinnerchildisanidiot@gmail.com. You can leave a voicemail or text us at 615-576-0525. Want to thank our friend Russ Weaver for the use of his song Top of Two for our ad music. And want to thank Damon for wearing that beautiful shirt.
Thank you. It's just a floral number.
It's a great pattern. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com.
Thursday shirt.
The old Thursday shirt.
I've got it written in the collar like this is my Thursday shirt.
You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/yourinnerchildisanidiot. We want to thank our current patrons, including
Jonathan Day,
Just Cuz,
Scalfasaurus,
Dr. Malcolm's Heaving Bosom,
who is also the supreme ruler of this podcast,
Heather Tuggle,
Tyler Richardson,
Justin Shea.
We should be saying these like Princess Mombi. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Maybe we shouldn't.
I don't know how to do her voice. Karen Kurd.
Lindsey Nell.
The Zesty.
Jacob Grimm.
Particle Man.
Damon's Australian accent. I started doing Diamonds. Which is actually probably a closer Australian accent than what I claim to be my Australian accent.
Dramatically placed hot dog.
Larissa Maestro.
T. Smith.
Jeremy Powlen.
Kevin from Cleveland.
Hizoner the Mayor.
And Dan McIntyre. Thank you all very, very much for your support. We really appreciate your help. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/yourinnerchildisanidiot. Thanks for listening, everybody. I have nothing good to say on the way out, so I'm just going to end it.
Dorothy Gale. So.
That's pretty
you can also exit a room that way.
So. Everybody's like waiting for you to come back in. They're like,
did he just go to the John? Is he going to come back?